Morning, everyone. Welcome back to this week's episode of Capital and Context with myself, Mark Insley, Director of Ascot Wealth Management, and Samuel Hallett.
Good morning.
Good morning. Bit of a different episode this week. We're going to try and get inside the sort of day, week, month of yourself. So an episode to, just sort of demonstrate to the audience what you're busy with, what dominates your day. Again, not designed to be a sell of Cape Berkshire. We're sort of pushing this as an independent, free-thinking podcast. But I think for aspiring fund managers, and again, just like pushing the multi-asset discipline that we practice, just giving people more of an insight into that. But before we get going too much on that, it has been another wild week.
Yes.
We've been through a lot of news headlines again over the Easter bank holiday. Sorry, I'm not meant to talk about dates to date your podcasts, but do you want to just bring us up to speed with what's happened the last week, and again, I like the fact of you not going with news headlines and giving your own take again on what it means versus stuff that we've been talking about in previous episodes.
Yeah, so thanks for the intro.
No worries, that was a long one, but yeah.
It's been a fun week. Don't get me wrong, we love the fact that and versus benchmark, but in nominal terms over the last 2-3 trading days, our portfolios are up over 5%, which is obviously fantastic. Puts everything bar one of the 10 portfolios into positive territory for the year. So that's good that we've recovered that position. I
can afford a Waitrose this week then.
I'm definitely. I've had way too much good food over the last couple of weeks. So we had going into Easter the threats of, look, if there isn't an agreement or if Iran didn't back down by very early Wednesday morning. Sorry, the weekend's blended all my dates in my head. Air strikes in general on Iran would be, quote unquote, destroy civilization, etc. That kind of scale. Destroy civilization kind of, to my mind, infers a little bit of weapons of mass destruction. Some other people took it as that way as well. I think, don't get me wrong, that was just rhetoric rather than any serious threat, but you still have to be careful with those kind of things. So going into the weekend, things were looking very negative. Coming into this working week, we had coming yesterday morning was very much the news was 2-week ceasefire agreement. The thing was, though, is whilst everyone was, obviously there's a degree of deserved rallying off of that, shows that there's an effort from both sides. Both sides were also claiming that the other, if you looked at the statements, were each were saying we would go into a ceasefire once the other side is done. Well, if that's the case, no one's going to end up backing down.
Yeah.
So I think everyone was getting a little bit too optimistic. One of the other things was that in the Iranian statement as well, when you look at their 10 points, bear in mind that Trump said, we can go with your 10 points as a starting point to negotiate from. Included in that was basically read as Iran has won, if you looked at their points. So included in that was to pass shipping through Strait of Hormuz, you had to pay a toll to Iran, which adds about $2 million onto every oil cargo shipment through the strait. Which
is that a current policy or?
So that's started about 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
but this is kind of like a formalization of it.
Is that for all countries? So it's like a form of toll, a form of tariff. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a toll to go through in essence. It's how it could pass under international law is very limited. You know, they got one angle which they can go down, which is they're providing services, which is why, you know, they're escorting through shipping with fast attack craft for like a couple of miles.
Is around both sides of that channel?
One.
So who's on the other side?
So directly opposite is Amman, but also around the periphery, obviously, got Saudi Arabia, Qatar. Going a little bit further up, you've got Kuwait, right towards the top of Gulf rather than straight through moves. You know, there's a lot of interested parties on this.
Yeah.
But obviously, directly opposite Iran within the Strait is Oman. So there's Iran.
Are they involved in the negotiations, or they
Nope.
just kind of just watching everything happen?
Yep. All of those people on the western side of the Strait are. Don't get me wrong, they'll be putting pressure onto the US.
Yeah.
My understanding is that actually they were being quite belligerent in their support for strikes on Iran over the last week or so, in the understanding that, look, you've started this. If you don't carry on, you're going to end up with leaving the area in a worse position from their standpoint in terms of their positioning strength within the area than how you started this. What's the framework that we're going off of for the next 2 weeks, I don't necessarily think is an awfully positive one. As I said, there's been various bits where they're in conflict with each other on what they said the agreement was. We also had yesterday the most intense amount of Israeli activity going north, attacking Hezbollah, and that was not surprisingly annoying Iran. And basically, Iran said, "Look, if you don't knock this off, the ceasefire is null and void. Carry on." But equally, there was a very suspicious attack on basically what you might have read about in the news is there's a pipeline that's been like a bypass pipeline in Saudi Arabia, so that they've been able to, instead of using their usual port facilities for loading oil onto ships, they've been able to divert that to basically the other side of the country. Limited facilities for loading, but you know, it gets some capacity. That pipeline was attacked yesterday, so actually could be in an even worse position than we were 2 days ago. I think the markets have got ahead of themselves a little bit there.
Yeah.
And we've seen that today. The markets are a little bit.
Where did oil finish yesterday? Down like 17%?
It's come back up again.
Okay.
When I last looked, it was like up at 96 again. Okay. It was at one point, I think, just under 90. Yeah. But bear in mind, there was points last week we were looking at 105, 106 again. So, I think people, as is often the case, always in our job, news is overtraded. Yeah. So that's something, I wouldn't say this is investment advice, but as an observation point for people watching, is where you often find is on particularly a political news story, is that you will find that the reaction to it is overdone and it will come back to a degree over the next couple of days. So
I think my only other question is was reading that Pakistan are playing quite a more important role. Like what's put them forward as the deemed negotiator between parties, and do you think this is sort of playing out to also benefit them, like politically and on the global stage?
Yeah,
and is there any play on that portfolio wise?
So unfortunately, I would say no for play on the portfolio wise. Like Pakistan is just nudging into a frontier market. Yeah. Like it's far too niche. From an NPS perspective, don't get me wrong, there are ways you could play it, but not within our sphere, really within our framework. Certainly be elevating them globally, positioning how they got in that position. Got to think of a list of countries that Iran has good diplomatic relations with. China, America doesn't have an amazing relationship with China. To be fair, it doesn't have an amazing relationship with Pakistan either, but there's a good framework there, at least in place. But you go back a couple of years with Ukraine and Russia, diplomatic kind of efforts when they did exist a little bit more. Turkey played a huge part, and that certainly elevated them a bit more. And so, yeah, it would certainly be elevating Pakistan up a little bit. But as you said, I think it's more of a case of, as is often his case, convenience as to actually who has reasonable relations with both sides of the coin.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the topic for the week. Talking a little bit more. Maybe if you could split your day in thirds. I think at the minute there's probably not a normal day. You've also got sort of responsibilities like this in a webinar, I know today, but I guess let's roll forward to Wednesday next week. What without anything crazy going on in the world or sort of media responsibilities wise would sort of set your day up at the minute?
Yeah, so one thing I would say very much about my role is people come into this role because they love the job, rather than no one comes into this expecting it to be an 8 to 5. So you kind of live it even that afterwards. If you're the kind of person that just loves absorbing information, then you're going to be doing that anyway outside of working hours. So it'll be literally, your alarm goes off on your phone, and frankly, you'll be already straight away, even as you press that snooze button, you'll be, first thing to do is just have a quick recap of where market futures have moved overnight.
Yep.
That gives you a little bit of a kind of thing of, okay, where's the institutional money moved around over the last 8 hours?
Futures for listeners are essentially derivative markets that are going on and pricing global indices or commodities before the formal open of a market. So on platforms like IG Index and Bloomberg and things, there's the ability to see what the market is essentially predicting the open to be, but they're also liquid traded markets in their own right.
Much.
But hopefully that's a quick
quick
explanation
we
of the
could go
futures
way
market.
into the layers on that one, but let's not go there. So media things just to work out where the institutional money with. Obviously, you're scanning down through, and if there was times last year where you're looking at a couple of bips, so a bip is like 1/100%. Just be looked at through like pretty flat generally. At which point,
get ready for the day.
You just immediately go to looking at your more macro kind of planning forward in terms of fund research, etc. So that bit there is actually what sets up what follows on the day.
Yep.
At the moment, when you say the last 4 or 5 months, we're looking at larger moves. That immediately makes you go, oh, okay, there's been a larger move there. What's caused it? And one thing that we are finding quite a lot this year is that actually it's based off of news that we have to some degree predicted, or we've seen there's been an upcoming likelihood of events playing out. But when you look into that, you look to see whether or not markets have overdone moves quite a bit, or whether they haven't priced in things yet enough. One thing at the moment is that I don't think the markets are pricing through inflation properly yet. I think particularly over the last few days, people have got more optimistic, and therefore they're forgetting about the more medium-term play that's going on here.
Okay, I'm gonna, shows I've worked with you too long. I'm gonna predict what Sam's answer is to my next question, if that can be zoomed in edit at all. That's what I think Sam's gonna say is his default morning read. So Sam, what would you say is who's the editor and author of your default morning read?
My editor, the editor of it.
Well, what's the article that you would read above any others in the morning?
At the moment, because it's such a political news thing, it's the FT.
Which particular person?
Oh, author's note.
Yeah. Yes. There it was, pre-validated. So
the great thing about author's note is the fact that actually, even in times like this, he might quite often will throw out stuff. It's like, actually, there's this other thing going on in the world that people aren't taking into account, and so therefore, it's a good thing to it's going up. To be honest, I'd say genuinely the first 2.5 hours of my day every day are just covering news, absorbing information, regardless of even how quiet the markets are. You spend at least 2.5 hours in the morning just absorbing information.
Yeah.
Hence why I don't like people booking me in things early.
Yeah. No, I think I agree with you on that. That John Author's article. I think he doesn't. I don't feel like he is accountable to anyone. So
Exactly.
I feel like he just writes.
It's just the thoughts are in his head. Just
Writes
go on paper.
Writes what is there and what is relevant. I agree.
There's
a
another
good setup article.
There's another. It's typically behind more of a paywall. So if we can get an affiliate fee, that'd be great. But we haven't, just for the record. So this is an independent recommendation, which is Yardeni Research. So just. I think his forename is Ed. So Ed Yardeni is just a really good economist and market analyst, and just reading his insights into things. Just again, it's that similar kind of thing in terms of he's not. Don't get me wrong, he has his clients, so you always have to bear that in mind. But just to get really insightful thoughts from people out. That's the thing. An awful lot of what comes into our news flow is just regurgitated from other people.
Yeah.
Whereas the thing I like about these two is it's primary thinking. It's actually what's going on in their head. And that's the stuff that we find in our portfolios. That's the times when we generate good returns. Yeah. Is when actually we go, a bit like going back to yesterday morning, when, Mark's up, and we were basically the only people that were going, hang on a second. This isn't adding up. This is not the success story people are making out that this is. Where we stand at the moment is a ceasefire, it becomes the permanent thing. It's not good. So yeah. Yeah.
And then what would you sort of if we could talk people through, there must be a certain point in the morning where you've got fund management trading deadlines on wrap platforms. So do you have a default point where you kind of mark off either in your head or in a system that we are making portfolio trades today or not, and then how does that impact the next 2-3 hours of your day?
Yeah, sure. So it's it's changed over the last couple of years as we've gone onto more platforms, just because for the team it takes a lot longer now to put these through. So I would have said go back 18 months, 2 years. Would have been able to have made a decision up to around about 9 a.m. Because our deadline to put stuff in is 9:45.
Yeah.
So obviously the teams need that time to process things. Now I think it needs to kind of almost go out as like a preemptive thing for the teams, where one of the things I've done more recently is say, look, if nothing moves market-wise between us clocking off at 5 p.m. and when we wake up, then you put the trades through. So actually, I'd say our trade decisions are now worked out the day before.
Or push them 2-3 days ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. And not just that, the thing that we got to bear in mind is, don't get me wrong, we've certainly seen plenty of evidence over the last 6 months to a year that we are more active with our trading than other MPS managers, quite a bit in some cases. Yeah. So we are capable of doing those more short-termish moves, but we still have that more medium-term outlook. So we shouldn't be looking exactly on what's going on.
It was just more, you get that point in the day that either that has to form a part of your day, and yes, you have oversight of that, and we rely on people to get that done. But
that handover, I'd say,
I guess that would then push you to kind of like 11 o'clock. Would you say you then enter a window of
that's when my other stuff
communicating with fund managers, and how does that play out? Just are those sort of many of those pre-booked in advance? Do you get to call on people on demand? A bit of a mixture of
all
both?
Of the above. Yeah. So my pre-booked stuff I would never have. I tend to do 11 to 2. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, I might be finishing at 3, but my point. That's when my pre-booked stuff tends to be. Mostly because of, you think, why not go up to 5? Need time for the team to write their notes and all of that kind of thing. Always important to write your notes on the same day. You will forget details, little details. The ad hoc calls, though, I know for well I could phone half a dozen people right now, and they'd pick straight up. They'd pick up, frankly, at 8 p.m. I mean, we're really good with some of the contacts we have, and be able to get their insights as to what's going on. Obviously, those kind of calls, they have to be a little bit more careful of how they phrase things because it hasn't gone through their compliance department, amongst other things. But there's a degree of ad hoc and let's call it structured.
Yeah. So a structured one would be like Tom McGrath. So that's been a long-standing meeting you guys have had every month. How do you feel that that helps you? And Tom's been a long dual contributor to that sort of thought brain combination of minds. I think it probably started more us sort of pushing Tom, and where are we with that, and what role does that play in the month? So
the role that Tom brings in is, I've started calling him more recently as an external consult. And the reason for that being is that, so Tom runs his own NPS service. So in a lot of ways, he's actually a competitor to us. But what that means is that he knows the mindset more of a multi-asset manager, and not just that, within an NPS framework, what our limitations are, what we can do across platforms, how quickly we can trade, and so on and so forth, liquidity concerns, etc. So we're able to have this discussion about, what's going on, and, or have you considered this aspect, or are we sure that's necessarily the right way to do things? Actually, sometimes it's two-way. But I really, really value his input. And not just that, I think it's important to have someone external to us as well.
Yeah.
A large part is because if I get asked a question and I can't sell to myself, in essence, terrible word, but still, my answer, then that's an immediate red flag that I need to revisit my assumptions, because I'm not believing my own assumptions. Yeah. So having that external consult in, and not just that, it stops groupthink going on.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, no matter, my team, great, but ultimately, I am within the structure, higher up on them, and there will be no doubt I want to please me to some degree. So how much are I going to fight back on some of my thoughts? Whereas having an external person, you get that genuine conversation. So it's really valued.
Yeah, no, agreed. And then, I guess sort of, going on throughout the day, but again, I think something I've sort of really enjoyed seeing expand is much better scenario planning. I think we're in a really nice space of you not just bringing me an opinion, you bring me an opinion with percentage chances of scenarios and things. And I take an example of just Tuesday. In our Tuesday in our advisor meeting before the ceasefire, I think you'd done your scenarios. I think you were 49% on exactly what happened, which bearing in mind you had to put 4 scenarios into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having sort of nearly 50% conviction that was what was going to play out and did is great. So how much of your again, I guess trying to keep today's theme, how much of your day is spent debating those scenarios and using the new modern world tools of scenario generation and stuff, and is that changing how you will run things in the coming years as well? Sorry, lots of questions. You get the theme of the question.
It's one of those things that is very much dependent on what's going on in the world in terms of percentages of my day.
I guess sometimes you don't need it, right?
Well, don't get me wrong, there's always something to scenario plan. You'd be foolish to be going into the world without any scenarios for if X, Y, Z happens. It's about how often do you revise those, and there's a new thing I need to double check that we're cool on. But at the moment, I would say even as part of all the other bits I'm doing, like for example, even before we rolled the camera on this, I said to you, there's something else I need to make sure our scenario plan is revised for, because it's the critical point is coming up in about 3-4 weeks. So the scenario planning now is going on constantly and feeding into that. So for modern tools you're talking about are more LLMs. So one thing that we use very much on our side is Claude. Claude is really how Claude works and thinks through is really good for our side of business. It's the great thing about them is because they've also got the phone apps as well, is your ability to do inputs onto those are instant.
Contextual side's massive.
Context size on Claude is huge. I'm amazed I'm still running the same chat for the Iran conflict, considering how much daily I'm churning through it. But like as I said, the thing is, like, we've all done it, students, whatever. You go down for a coffee away from your desk, and you go, just remembered. Be able to literally throw that into the tool immediately, and then by the time I've gone up to my desk, it'll be 80% of the way through of updating the scenario analysis and getting the other bits of information to put into it. So I think, that's honestly, I would consider that being the equivalent of, frankly, 2 more people in my team. It's been a huge
I think you're
gain.
understating. I reckon 5.
Maybe I should. Obviously, I should be asking for more budget and from the team.
No, it's okay. So and then lots of time. I mean, again, I feel that's how the day has changed. Exactly that you're able to, you don't have to have a 2-hour right. I'm gonna just think about this. It's just that ability to almost be putting little bits in and you're
Absolutely.
like, as you say,
There was a point.
Don't want to say you do that and go and sit on the toilet and you come back and you've got 8 hours work done, but it kind of is that impactful. I feel at the minute. So
we both said this about the same time around about Christmas time, that the thing that is an adjustment in your head for using LLMs within the workplace, that is the power move, so to speak, is when you stop going from just staring at one chat and waiting for it to update after you prompted it in, to if you've got a little bit of an ADHD head like mine, so your head is already jumping around 8,000 places all the time, is the fact you can put one input in and then your head's thought of something else, so you go to the other chat and input it. So you can actually work on like 7-8 things all at one time, and you're just waiting for it to do its updates. So genuinely, if you've got an ADHD head, working with it in that way is a real power tool.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's all good.
No, good. But as you can see, busy day, utilization of external tools, internal tools, new world tools. So hopefully that gives an insight into the day of a multi-asset manager. Probably the bit that's missed off there is, as I say, responsibilities like this. And, one thing that works so well, I think, at Ascot Wealth is the, hours per day of also fielding questions and comments from our advisors that are constantly going and relaying portfolio information to clients in meetings, which for us, we're privileged to have an internal discretionary fund management function like this, and that I know sucks up hours of your day, so I just didn't want to undersell that with everything else that sort of goes on in the day.
Do you know what the other thing is, though, is actually, from my perspective, it's actually a time saver, believe it or not, because the thing is, by us putting out the content such as this, as well as the blogs, frankly a decent website, as well as the insights page, which are a bit more techy and are not for retail clients really, so they're behind a login, is they mean that the advisors are well briefed, which means that they can handle the queries direct straight to the retail clients as and when they ask, which obviously from my perspective, that saves me time repeating the same answer 15 times. Is there more we could do? There's always more we could do. So if people have ideas, throw them out. I actually think it's been a real benefit of what we do.
Good. All right. Well, thank you as ever for your time, Sam. We'll wrap things up there. Hopefully another useful episode. And let's hope we're still all in ceasefire by next week and things can play themselves out.
Let's hope the talks conclude by Friday.
Yeah. Good. All right. Thank you, Sam. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.